There it is. Okay. Welcome again. Welcome, everybody. So glad you're here. So glad you've all made it and made it over to the other stream. So sorry again for the delay and the kerfuffle moving over to a different link. And I'm very glad we managed to get you all along, because I'm actually now like a little bit discombobulated, but actually really excited to celebrate volume 2 with you. This is it for those of you who haven't got theirs yet. It's beautiful. Anna O'Connor designed the cover. Lots of people worked on this. Want to say a huge thank you to the team, everybody who's worked on this. Everybody who's contributed their writing, contributed so much time to make it the best it can be. It's always such a moving process when it comes together. And I get to read the pieces, sort of, I screen them quickly when they first come in, and then when I read them again to kind of create the final order for the book, it's always really moving to see how they've developed. So excited to celebrate this volume with you, and thank you so much for joining us for that, because it would be very boring and very sad actually to do this without other people. So glad you're all here. I have some amazing readings waiting for you today. Some great writers who are here to share their work with you live, which is just fantastic. I can't wait to hear it. Like, whenever I hear the work actually read out, it's every time it's like different and exciting again. So very much looking forward to that. And if you've joined us for the volume 1 launch, or if you've followed us for a while, you probably already know this, so I'll keep it brief. But Hillfire Anthology and Hillfire Press started basically with a group of people who did the Masters in Creative Writing at Edinburgh University in 2019. And unfortunately, that year was cut short because everything shut down because of the pandemic. And we really got on very well, and we wanted to keep working together. So we started Hillfire Press and have been publishing an annual anthology, or like have published one anthology before this one. So now that brings us up to 2. Yeah, let's just after all the delays and stuff, let's dive right in. I've got MH Monica for you as our first reader, and Monica is a part-time writer and editor and full-time daydreamer, apparently, with an MSc in creative writing from Edinburgh. She's edited and published over 200 books and written several children's stories for K-12 publications. And she will read for us today from My First Scooter Lesson, or How I Nearly Launched Myself into Another Dimension. And I'm going to switch into speaker mode for this so we can listen to Monica properly. I'm going to mute myself, and there you go, Monica.
Thank you so much, Lena. I hope you guys can hear me. Okay, so let's get started. Good morning, first of all, or good evening, and everything in between to everyone joining in from around the world. I'm so thrilled to be here today for the virtual launch of the Hillfire Anthology Volume 2. It has been an amazing journey, and I can't wait to read to you the story of my first scooter lesson, or how I nearly launched myself into another dimension. So diving right into the story, buckle up, folks. I'm going to tell you about the time my grandfather taught me to ride a scooter. Bikes and scooters, or mopeds, not to be confused with motorized scooter, are all the rage in India when you're a teenager. I was 15 years old back then, and the prospect of driving on Indian streets terrified me. Let me clarify, it still does. On the one hand, we have countless potholes and random pieces of asphalt that stick up like daggers trying to stab wheels and feet. On the other hand, all drivers of cars, bikes, scooters, trucks, auto rickshaws, and buses drive like they have countless lives and can respawn as though in a video game. Newsflash, people, you have one life. So don't turn your commute to work into a Fast and Furious movie. Despite being scared, I was also very excited to learn to drive. It felt like such a grown-up thing to do. So I woke up at dawn, teary-eyed, during my summer vacation and followed my grandfather to his old, heavy, beaten-down scooter. Once he gathered his faded navy blue lungi between his legs and settled his short and sturdy frame onto the seat, he gave me a grunt. Taking the cue, I sat behind him and focused on his white hat, which was slicked back like always, as though he had stepped out of the 60s. He drove us to a spacious side street where there were hardly any vehicles, just joggers and dog walkers out and about at 6:30 a.m. The symphony of honking automobiles would not begin for another 2 hours. Perfect. My grandfather got off the scooter, handed the steering to me, and I thought, here we go, let's zoom around the street. And then he told me to turn off the engine and start pushing the scooter forward with my feet. I was confused. Why push it around when you can drive it? But he insisted, and so I used every bit of my pre-breakfast energy to push the scooter forward. We made slow progress, and I mean slow. He walked by my side, enjoying the cool breeze and slightly swinging his arms, while I huffed and puffed like a damn wolf. Sweat quickly gathered on my forehead and back. My limbs were getting tired, and a sharp pain started to throb at the base of my spine. Why, Tata, why? I asked between gasps. It's all part of the process. That morning, I deeply empathized with the monks training at Shaolin temples. I was hoping my grandfather wouldn't make me carry buckets of water up the stairs next. Luckily, he told me I was ready to drive after half an hour of scooter pushing. He showed me the controls, warned me about the kickback when starting the vehicle, and then gently lowered himself onto the back seat. This made me tremble as I tried to balance the extra weight. Despite his caution, there was a sudden jerk at first, but we held on, and off we went. I started to enjoy the ride, gaining confidence and speed as I drove. That was when we hit our first obstacle, a speed breaker. And I mean a literal one. To know what happens next and how I nearly launched myself into another dimension, grab yourself a copy of the Hillfire Anthology Volume 2. And thank you so much for this opportunity. It has been a pleasure writing and reading out the story for you guys. And huge thanks to Veena, Zala, Katie, and the whole team at Hillfire. You guys have done such an amazing job. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, Monica. You're very welcome. What a lovely reading. So nice and special to actually hear you read this out loud. And actually, I wanted to show you something really quickly, because your picture did make it into the final published thing, which I'm not sure that you knew. So that's pretty awesome. Yeah. All right. Thank you. Great. Always just so great to hear these readings. The next writer I'm going to introduce to you is Nicole Christine Caradas. She's a fiction writer from Chicago, currently finishing up her PhD in creative writing at the University of Edinburgh. Her work has appeared internationally in anthologies and online, and she will be reading for us today from her story, Brontide. Off you go.
Thank you, Lena, and thank you to everyone involved in Hillfire. I'm really excited about this anthology, and I think you've put together a great team. So today I'll be reading from my story, Brontide. And yeah, I'll just get going. So, Brontide. The sea ebbs slowly, wrapping itself around her ankles. Toes dig into wet sand as she makes her way further into the water, her feet impervious to the rocks and broken shells that crunch beneath them. Within the waves, she sees him, his face swirling beneath the midnight blue water, his pale brown eyes, the blonde curls he always has to sweep back. But then she blinks and he's gone. And there's nothing but the rolling seaweed, the white foam crashing onto the beach. Cain and Morgana feasted on each other, clutching desperately for survival. She needed his touch, he needed hers. The first time they tangled, their bodies fused together, the welding so seamless it was hard to remember they had ever been two. Morgana's lungs collapsed, her stomach shriveled, her arteries sputtered, and her brain went to sleep. The only part that remained was the pulsing of her heart, which echoed back from deep within Cain, the heart that sustained him too. Morgana's dress drags through the water, but she does not feel its growing weight. The sky above her threatens to crack open, but still she ventures out towards the call. Her fingertips skim the water. The salt in the air clings to her hair, her eyelashes. It coats her nostrils as she inhales, dropping her head back until her hair follows her hands, dipping beneath the surface. Cain slipped a delicate chain of twisted silver around Morgana's neck as he whispered, "You'll never be free of me, Morgana." Her hand cradled the vial of his blood, entombed and still warm. She did not wish for freedom. Morgana sliced her own palm with a dagger, the blade carved from onyx. She licked her hand, letting her saliva dance with the blood, a slow and sensuous Roomba on her tongue. Cain held an identical vial to her mouth, collecting the crimson potion and tying it around his own neck. Morgana slips under and her body dissolves. Submerged, she is weightless. No, not weightless, boneless, matterless. Like each sinew that held her together has vanished, turned to salt water that washes away, drifting off to where it cannot be distinguished from the rest of the sea. Cain loved nothing more than making his list. He listed all he loved about Morgana, her gray eyes, her teeth grinding when she slept, the missing nail on her left pinky toe. He listed all he wanted for them, a house that opened onto the beach, a promise that they would always be together, a joint funeral where they were buried at sea. He listed his rules for Morgana. Do not speak his name to others. Do not wonder where he goes. Do not ask him any questions. Morgana adhered to them. She didn't think twice about it, not at first. When he didn't come home at night, she kept her worries to herself. When he grew angry at her for doing the same, she convinced herself that he was overwhelmed and what he really needed was her. So she spilled her blood for him, and he thanked her. When Morgana emerges, electricity crackles through her veins. She vibrates, a whirlpool spinning around her. Her hand clutches the onyx dagger, the black stone glinting against her ghostly pale skin. She drags it across her thighs, first the left, then the right. Blood trickles down her legs, mixing with the dark water of the whirlpool. Water rises, a hurricane, and Morgana is the center. Cain tired of her. He tired of her voice, her touch, her presence. Morgana ripped the vials from their necks. She shattered them in her palm, so his blood and her blood became their blood. She clung to him, proffering the sweet crimson cocktail. He peeled her off him like he was peeling off his skin. He stood before her, bloodied muscles and exposed bones, and like a banshee, she screamed, a primal guttural sound so terrifying, Cain reached for the salt. The sky above rips open, the crash of thunder roars, but Morgana doesn't hear it. She hears only the call from within the water, the distant thrum she had long forgotten. She listens closely. It will tell her what to do, what she must offer in exchange for what she needs. The hum grows louder, rivaling the forces in the sky that try to stop her. A bolt of lightning singes the beach, turning sand to glass, but does nothing to faze Morgana. She isn't afraid of the lightning. She is made from something stronger. She knows she can take on the lightning and win. And if you want to know what happens with Morgana and Cain in the end, get yourself a copy of Hillfire. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you, Nicole. You all are so good at sales pitches. Thank you. That was a fantastic reading. And also your eyeliner is on fleek. Oh, amazing. Yeah, running the risk of repeating myself here. I just love hearing you all read your work. The next writer that I have for you is Julia Guillermina. She's a writer at night, but the daylight turns her into a history teacher. She lives in Paris and writes in English, Spanish, and French. Today, lucky for most of us, she will be reading from something she wrote in English, her short story, The Front Row. And I'm very excited to hear you read this. Julia, off you go.
Thank you. First of all, thank you to all the people who only speak Spanish or French, but that are here nevertheless. And I'm starting, sorry, now. I almost arrived late to the funeral, but they waited for the last of us. Everyone was already seated, wearing silent faces. I had walked here with a group from the bus station. We were those who didn't own morning clothes. I had found this burgundy jumper, sober enough. There weren't many seats left. The others went to stand at the back of the room. It concealed their rainbowy allure from sight. I spot a free seat in the first row, and after a moment of hesitation, I weaved in and out between the benches and sat there. I didn't dare look back at the group I had come with. The master of ceremony stopped the soft music that filled the lack of conversations. The hush felt deafening. Welcome. Her microphone voice punched my eardrum. You who have come to honor Marina's memory. There were Marina's siblings, her mother, her favorite teacher. Everyone felt the absence of Marina's father, who died 5 years before. Some friends of the family had managed to come from all across the country. I imagined they were all thinking of their memories of Marina. They would have so many. Marina, at 6, mispronouncing words like all children do. Marina, at 10, running barefoot on the pebbles. Marina, at 12, starting the trumpet and annoying every neighbor. Marina, at 15, bringing back a cat from the street and convincing everyone to take care of him, Louis. We had organized a party for his first birthday. The master of ceremony called Liz, Marina's mom, to the pulpit. She walked tall, and where she spoke, her voice didn't shake. Her eyes were clear. She knew what to say. Maybe she had started her husband's funeral with the same words. When she unfolded her paper, I breathed. I feel so lucky to have known Marina, she said with a smile. I didn't. If I hadn't met her, I wouldn't be here. What a horrible thing, funerals. I was glad I wouldn't go to my own. The people I could see had soft expressions. Their eyes had that glisten, their nose had that redness, moistened skin around the nostrils and the mouth, wet and disorganized lashes. I wasn't crying. My life wasn't changing that much. I didn't know Marina 8 months ago. Liz went back to her seat and Marina's brother took the lead. He, who looked so much like his sister, he insulted her. out loud. I hadn't had the chance to meet him before the funeral, but I had heard about him. He was known as a shy guy, more interested in computers than people, but grief has a strong hold. One of the things it does, it's make you angry. Marina's brother started crying mid-sentence as if he was shocked by what he'd just said. I couldn't look at him and see his despair. A man whispered behind me, "How unfair. How young a girl." She was young indeed. We all were. My mom had said it over the phone, and Liz, and this man. This is normal. You shouldn't have to live this at your age. Well, then make it stop. And the end is on the Hillfire Volume 2 that you can buy online. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Julia. And Julia is also our amazing finance person. She chases me up for all the invoices and bank statements and transactions and puts them into amazingly organized Excel sheets. And without her, none of this would work. We wouldn't be able to pay for the Zoom subscription. So thank you so much for that, Julia, and for your fantastic reading. This was just amazing to listen to. It was great. Nice. Okay. All right. So next we have Katie Hay Moloko. She is an aspiring wordsmith from small town coastal Georgia. And she has actually been majorly involved in making this event happen. So she's, you know, chased up the writers, told them to read for 5-minute time slots, made sure that, you know, we will have decent lighting so you all can see our faces, and that we've done a sound check. And yeah, she's just been writing lots and lots of emails and having like done lots and lots of thinking to make sure that this all works and that everybody's here on time. And yeah, very, very grateful to Katie for stepping in and doing all that. And in her writing, she explores faith, the hopeful, the imaginative, and the complexity of being human with other humans. And I believe we're about to hear some of that from her poem, Potsherds. Off you go, Katie.
Thank you so much, Lena. And yeah, just to reiterate what everyone has already said, thank y'all so much for coming out it's afternoon where I am, this afternoon, evening, morning, this Saturday. And huge shout out to the whole Hillfire team for making this happen. It's always such an honor to be part of this team of writers. And I think I'm actually going to be the first person to read my piece in its entirety. But there is still definitely a reason to get the anthology, because you need to see how it looks on the page, because the formatting actually means a lot to this poem. So without further ado, this is Potsherds, a poem in 2 parts. Are you sure you mean it when you say those words, "Thy will be done," over and over to your journal? You'll run out of ink soon. Do you hear yourself? The same phrase thrown against the wall. I'm surprised there isn't a hole there, that you haven't worn out your knees, the backs of your hands where your fingers interlaced rub your skin. Why are you nervous? I thought you said you believe this stuff. The door will open at its appointed time. Appointed time. Who talks like that? I thought you said you were ready to accept God's will, whatever that is. Whatever pleases the potter, you said. Yet look at you, back where you started, sitting with your face in the sun, eyes squeezed shut. So if he asks you to look at him, you can blame the tears on the light. I'm sitting alone when my father appears. He says, "Son, come with me. There's something important I need to show you." So I pick myself up and follow him. Through the door, past the clamor, the roar of the market, down a ways to the potter's house. And there he stops and prompts, "Tell me what you see." And I look. And I say, "I see a man, his hands vast as the heavens, hands raising valleys to mountainous heights, extricating light from abyssal oblivion. I see this man squeezing the soil so tenderly, violently, that the clay in his hands, it's beginning to breathe. I watch the mud slather itself over his immaculate skin, catching under the man's fingernails, grinding itself into the crevices of his palms, the wrinkles between his knuckles, until it seems that the man and clay are one, caught up in a strange dance of stretching and bending, a deconstructive transformation. And as I watch, spellbound, my father, he turns to me and he asks, "What do you think, my son, this clay would say if it could speak?" I consider the man, attending to his wheel, responding to the clay as if it can feel every dip and every rise, every slice from the potter's knife, every intrusion of his fingers. I consider them and I wonder, in the crafting and the shaping, is there ever a point where maybe, just maybe, the clay says, "Oh, potter, how I love the wonder of your touch. But if I'm made for this, then please tell me why it hurts so much." I wonder if there are moments when it just wants to run, tell the potter it's done being shattered and fashioned just to be smashed again. I wonder if the clay fancies itself an ornate vase, the kind that one would place on a pedestal in a home, decorate with precious stones, and if it knew its destiny was just to be a crude lamp designed to brighten the potter's night and be filled with oil, only to be burned, given charred black edges. I wonder, would it turn to the potter and make a different proposition? I know were I in its position, I certainly would try, but as I watch, I realize this bodily vessel of mine is not so noble as this ugly, unformed, pliable piece of dirt, this handful of earth with nothing to prove, proving its worth by humbling itself to this man with hands like the heavens, perfection, unafraid to mingle with dust. This lump of clay surrendered, complete submission, totally trusting in the process. My father asks again, "What says the clay, my son?" I say, "Thy will be done." Thank you.
Thank you, Katie. Wow, again, what a reading. What a meditation. Thank you. That was, well, I'm still thinking about it, as you can probably tell. And it's always hard at these events to switch between, you know, trying to enjoy the readings and be in the moment as much as I can, because I want to hear all your lovely readings, and also trying to keep an eye on the Zoom and what I need to say for the next person, and also the lovely comments in the chat. Like we have some amazing comments coming in. Katarina says, "Wow, that was powerful. Thanks, Katie." Earlier we had, you know, there are amazing comments for all the writers, and we'll look at these later, and we'll actually be able to, you know, download the chat script, and all your lovely comments will actually get to our writers. So we really, really appreciate them and you being here and, like, you know, just coming along for the ride in as committed a way as you're doing. Yeah, it makes it very, very worthwhile and very moving. And if you think of anything that you'd like to ask the writers, we have a Q&A at the end of this event. So if you have any questions that you want to ask, you can pop them in the chat now, or leave it for later, but we'll be very happy to get to them in the Q&A. Okay. Ooh, intense. So many like different pieces of writing in such a close space. But we'll move on to the next writer, poet, Wendelin Law, poet and writer from Hong Kong who lives in Edinburgh. Her manuscript, As Wild As, what a title, was shortlisted for Magma's poetry pamphlet competition. And she will be reading 10 tankas today. And maybe before you start reading, you can say like a couple of quick words about the form of the tanka. And the title is Plunder Hearts Plundered. Off you go, Wendy.
Yay. I just want to say I have to like draw myself back after listening to so many moving, very, very deeply moving readings from you guys, and just want to say like a big thank you to everyone for like making this happen, and just thank you so much. And I'm so honored to be part of it. And if you haven't got the copy yet, feel free to go to the official website and get one. So today I'll be reading 10 tankas, collectively titled as Plunder Hearts Plundered. So basically tanka is a very traditional form of Japanese poetry. It's very short, it's only got 5 lines. So it's pretty similar to like a haiku, but haiku only has 3 lines. And 5, 7, 5 syllables respectively. But for tanka, it has like 2 extra lines of 7 syllables. So these 10 tankas were written during September in Edinburgh when a lot of different events happened. For example, like the lying-in state of the Queen, and also like the city council strike. So I live in an area in Edinburgh called Darai and Haymarket, which is absolutely a lovely place. But then during the strike, so the rubbish is actually like piling up. So it could be like, I need to give like a trigger warning. It contains like pretty coarse language in this series of tankas, but then hopefully you get like a more poetic sense out of like the use of more coarse language. So here we go. Plunder Hearts Plundered. 1. Brown paper, lost ink, the old receipt clasped within a loved vintage book. To whom else shall I confess how these rouge nights ravish me? 2. Why? I ask and ask till words confine existence. Existence gorge words. Hot red mouthfuls trickling down my lips, flaring. Why? 3. Leaves, komolebi, gravitate to woodland paths. Rock stars, toe taps, mulch, sing, when in forests one could only think of oneself dead. 4. Under Arthur's seat, desiccated wings whir and plunder hearts, plundered hard. Snuff minds fluttered in wind, away in wind, throb and drop. 5. Drop wings dropped in vain, I lost to dawning darkness, saw stray eyes strayed, slain, defeated by senseless wars, breathless lying. I am bare. 6. In festoons they hang, there's no hay in Haymarket. Trash hangs, trash pools, trash up and beyond the rice fields, knots of wheat, but concrete shits. 7. Praise the arcane moon, you are steadfast, beautiful. We name you the queen, white, undying, but lying in state forever, the queen. 8. Oh, God save the queen, said drunk men in drunken pants. 2 wet patches drew a map to all things fallen, pine rays, cheers to the air. 9. Cortege, long cortege. Crowds come, crowds go, crowds protest. Catch a glimpse to brag. For what do your jewels flash? Glints of blood, sweat, hip, hooray. 10. Conceived by my light, thoroughly. Darling, you are fucked by the venereal sun that never sets, never rests. So we actually have one more. It's a coda, surprise, because I couldn't get enough of tankas. So here you go, we've got a coda. Incorrigible, night soaked in blood red, they come surreptitiously. Again, sun still glaring, but lo, the people are undressed. Thank you so much. And just want to say hi to mom and dad. Hello. They're watching downstairs, actually. So yeah, hello. Thank you so much. Oops.
Oh, thank you, Wendy. Thanks. And hello, Wendy's parents. You have such a wonderful daughter. And thank you so much for coming and watching this. I've lost my track now. Yeah, because just before the event, sometime in the last couple of days, I asked everybody, is there anything that I should mention that maybe isn't in your bio, like maybe something exciting that has happened since then? And Wendy modestly didn't get in touch, but I just remembered, and I just looked at Twitter again to like make sure I got it right. And you've been like, you won at Verve Poetry Festival. Can you like tell us about that real quick?
All right, so it's basically a first poetry festival. So it's a competition about protest, on the theme of protest, judged by Kim Moore. So Kim Moore's a really my idol in poetry, and she's very kindly like chose the poem as a poem I've written, and it's called Ovation, which is a protest about like the current dictatorship going on in a country that can't be named. So if you're interested, feel free to go to Verve's website, and you can see a lot of like details on it. So thank you, Lena, for mentioning. Yeah, and yeah, thanks.
I've just popped it in the chat, and then I wasn't quick enough unmuting my Zoom again. Thanks, Wendy. Very impressive to win at something like that. And yep, just your work is always a reminder to me that whatever we do, it's political. Like whatever we do, whatever we don't do, it's political. Whatever we write, you know, whatever we don't write. And I was really struggling with this when I wrote the foreword for this volume, where I wanted to mention this. And then I was like, but where do I stop the list? You know, where would I stop a list of everything that is going on politically in the world right now that desperately needs our attention? And where do we turn to? And it's just sort of, art for me offers us a way to look and to look, to listen, to like bring our attention to something or bring other people's attention to something, but also sometimes to escape and like to get a break from everything that's going on. And my favorite line from your 10 tankas is, there is no hay in Haymarket. I just love it so much. Right, okay, so next we have Hannah Maria Vesta. Hannah is a queer German poet who writes in English. Her mission in life is to edit books, write poems, and eat the most delicious food she can find. Currently, I've inquired for you, breaking news, her latest food obsession is watermelon salad. And Hannah will be reading, she has 2 poems actually in this anthology, Endometriosed and insert username was on a bike ride. And Hannah, before you start, you can tell us if you're reading one or both of these poems and which one or which ones. Off you
Yeah,
go.
thank you so much, Lena. I'll be reading both poems, and thank you for everyone reading so beautifully so far. It's just been such a joy to listen. It bears repeating. Amazing team, you rock. I'm thrilled to be here. Crazy. Okay, I'm now on to business. Insert username was on a bike ride. You bike many miles. In my emails, the notification every time you take another trip. Sometimes I delete them. Sometimes I let them sit there as memory of something I was not part of. But I can see you there, pedaling hard, sweating, then the ease of the slope and the bend at the end. Your hair too short to note how deliciously the wind befuddles you. Your face so red from hitting the breeze. Your softening pulse whirling a waltz as you stop, drinking the view you made with your feet, dancing in circles, dancing away on the map. I sharpen my binoculars, adjusted to long distance, zooming in. I'm racing to wait for you, to be home, saved and sound. And this is formatted in a very specific way, so buy the book. And the second one, so I have endometriosis, and I don't know a lot of poems about this topic. So I thought I'd write one, and it's probably not going to be the last one. So this is one facet of this thing that I have. Endometriosed. Ancient infants idle in situ on the uterine balcony, enjoying a smoke or four. Legend has it they rebel when you turn 32, stage a sit-in to slide out. Make a motherhood maelstrom of your body, and every signifier you have left turns tiny hands ever faster, dragging you, growing you, ashtray, serving uproarious squall. Revered screams mammoplasty, reversed. Reduced to boob, banished to coop. Diagnosed, endometriosed, mad luck. I grow anti-yoke where fast hands can't tug. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Hannah. I've been reliably informed that there will be cake waiting for you in the kitchen when you're
Gorgeous. Amazing, thank you.
done. I just love following the chat if I can. Like I don't see everything right away, but I did notice the cake. So you seem to have good people in the same house that you're in. Where was I? Yeah, thank you. These 2 poems, so different, like just really, really different. And I'd love to, or are they though? I don't know. They just strike me as different. And I'd love to come back to that in the Q&A, because you said in your intro that especially the second one is personal. And that's just really interesting to read and to hear. And also I want to reiterate the formatting. The formatting really, you know, contributes so much to, I mean, any poem, but like the bike ride one in particular. So if you haven't done so already, buy our book. All right. Hannah, have you had any watermelon salad today?
I did have that.
Awesome. Fantastic. Yes.
With feta.
Okay.
So good.
How high was the chance that you would have answered this question with yes at the moment? Like, how many days out of 10?
At least 4. So
4. Okay, so it was like, yeah.
Lucky, right? but also predictable. So
40%
thank you.
chance, and I hit it. Yay! Awesome. All right. Cool. Thanks so much, Hannah. Next up, we have Skye Wilson. Skye loves being Scottish. She is a bossy Ceilidh dancer, tells everyone the Proclaimers went to her local high school. And if you don't know who the Proclaimers are, first of all, shame on you. Second of all, they are the 500 miles guys. Yeah. And she cries at Sunshine on Leith, understandably. She is also an amazing rugby player. And she's given me one of the most important bits of writing advice in my writing career. I could see her looking a bit confused, but like we were sitting in a cafe in Edinburgh, kind of quite close to the beginning of our MSc. And we're just talking about like getting started, you know, sort of starting writing on a blank page, whether it's in your notebook or whether it's in on your laptop or whatever. And I was just like, I just have to give myself permission to write something bad at first. And Skye was just like, yeah, because things being shite is the first step to things being great. And that really stuck with me. So I'm really looking forward to hearing you read your poems just now. Off you go, Skye.
Thank you so much, Lena. I do remember that actually. Yeah, and sorry to my gran if she watches this for the swearing, and sorry that my poems don't rhyme. But yeah, as you will be able to tell from my poems, I do love being Scottish. I'm gonna give a little definition before my first poem. So a croft is a small plot of arable land, and in my gran's family home, it runs from the house right down to the beach that goes out onto the loch. So yeah, origins. For one day, I met a girl with gappy teeth and a birthmark just like mine. My frozen fingers spluttered to a start, all careful lettering and longing. I wrote Sophie, Sophie, Sophie until I ran out of pages, and that diary slipped to the back of a drawer. My first real poem, full of exclamation marks and awkward line breaks, was about our croft, the sharp sting of nettles, the salt smack of the loch blow, mud-caked boots and the neighbour's daughter. My dad hung it on his office wall, and I too was hooked, falling in love again, 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 writing poems for each new adoration, becoming a little more myself with every word. Yeah, I've got 3 poems. They're all pretty equally short, so I will read them all. Where I grew up, a burn is a river. A stranger's gaze, gone before I catch it, haunts. Skinned knees and the heather of my first kiss. Drunken lights, notebooks filled with love letters and illegible lists. Plunging face of rock sprouts from a shallow that ripples like 1,000 wrinkled fingertips. Singing, scraping ache of throat, frayed rope swing in my fingers, gasp and slap in freezing burn, feet made clean and cold. I catch my own eye in a mirror dark moment of still water, reach towards the blurred face, clutch with unfamiliar fingers, burn. And finally, this is not about being Scottish. Are we there yet? The sun spills through my car windows, this car that feels like truly mine, like strong tea and long lunches. With my shining pink driving license pulsing in my purse, I steer, eyes alert and laughing as you crack a can, feed me joyous chocolate buttons. We use our silliest voices for songs we're not sure why we love, except they make us feel like sides of mountains, like the luck of unsplattered insects, like the skeleton of a leaf stuck to a bird's foot, like flying despite our bags weighing us down. Thank you very much, and thank you everyone else for all your beautiful work and your gorgeous readings.
Wow, I want strong tea and a long lunch now. It's lunchtime somewhere in our audience, right? And also the lack of unsplattered insects in a poem about driving is just particularly poignant to me. Thanks, Sky, for this beautiful reading, and also sorry for letting your gran know that you swear occasionally. Like, it's very rare, like it really hardly ever happens. It was just that one time, and it was just because she really needed to drive home that point. Like, it was just essential, and it's helped my writing a lot, so it was definitely worth it. Next up, and I can't believe like this is already our final reader for tonight, but like we will then still have the Q&A, which I'm very much looking forward to. So next up is Malina Shamsuddin. Her stories started in journalism, then public relations for an agency, a multinational, and now a nonprofit. So jumping off of that, you might be a little surprised at what we're going to hear just now. And we were actually, I know Malina from an opera workshop, and she worked with a similar topic then, and then she published a related story in From Arthur's Seat, which is that publication where most of us first got to know each other, that we made when we were all doing the Masters in Creative Writing at the University of Edinburgh. And yeah, very glad Malina has joined us and has come along, and she will read to us today from her short story, The Cleaner.
Thanks so much, Lena. So hello, everyone. My story is an extract of Cinderella, and if she was making bank as a crime scene cleaner. That's the title, is The Cleaner. I imagine my characters in a world where their stories are real, so look out for other characters that you may find familiar. Before I start, I just wanted to flag some trigger warnings, which includes elements of death and gore, but it's not too creepy. So now that you've been forewarned, my story kicks off with a review, not unlike something you would find on Google. So, Ever After Services, voted 5 stars as declared by 430 Help Me reviews. Trauma cleaning and biohazard removal in the dark forest. Open 24 hours, call 1-800-KEEP-IT-CLEAN. A verified customer, Ms. Snow W of the dark forest says, very professional and able to accommodate the urgency of the situation. Ella and her team went above and beyond during my time of grief. Without them, I don't know how I would have made it through this. Now about the business. At Ever After, we address situations that may upset the conventional cleaner. Our highly trained technicians regularly carry out trauma, death, and crime scene cleaning tasks for emergency services, social services, landlords, as well as commercial and industrial companies. Be it incidents of self-harm or homicides, our discrete task force works through a rigorous 5-step process to restore a safe environment or workplace. Step 1, the assessment. Now, it's quite common to gravitate towards a profession due to parental influence. Perhaps less common is choosing a career because you had to scrape your deceased father off the floor. There's more to that story, of course, but as anecdotes go, not many acquaintances or significant others have the stomach for it. And as it happens, even if they say they do, they really don't. Good women don't mess with bodily fluids, I've been told. Fortunately, my clients appreciate the work that I do. This partly thanks to my long-serving crew members, Jack and Gus. Vegan Jack tells tall tales, like attributing his bald pate to a youthful indiscretion with a woman larger than life. He brings experience in giant catastrophe cleanups and excels in hard-to-reach places. Now, despite his restricted palate, he has a strong aversion to green beans and herbaceous stalks, because according to him, they just invite trouble. Now, Petite Gus, on the other hand, he handles pest control. Once a rising amphibian biologist, his career came to a fork when vandals broke into his lab to, get this, fling endangered frogs against the walls. I mean, fair enough, as backstories go, we're an odd bunch, but we complement each other. After more than 400 cleaning jobs together, we've developed an advanced shorthand. What gets us through the day-to-day gruesomeness is knowing that our toil is a small contribution towards lending the dead or injured a shred of dignity, while allowing those left behind to recoup and possibly imagine some sense of normalcy. Back to today. Yes, today my crew and I are tackling the home of one Mr. Beast. According to his housekeeper, my client, the homeowner had been up to his usual tinkering while Mrs. Beast was away. He accidentally shot himself in the collarbone while cleaning an antique pistol. Now, the paramedics' report implies a discrepancy, but I respectfully defer to my client's version of events. After all, Mr. Beast is fighting for his life in hospital, and anything that helps my client get through this trauma is all that matters. As we enter the grand empty house, I'm immediately overwhelmed by the scent of rose in the foyer. I hate roses and resent the floral arrangement's poor efforts to mask the pervading scent of iron from the next room. And oddly, the scent of wet dog. I'm certain the client said nothing of domestic animals, and none of the usual pet paraphernalia in the vicinity. The fourth finger in my left hand starts to cramp. To the right, comes behind me, terribly off key. I barely managed to jump out of the way as Gus barrels into the space without gear, followed by Jack's steadier pace. The regime has begun. So that's where my story leaves you. I hope you buy the book to find out what happens from steps 2 through 5 and learn who the rats are. And yes, there's a Prince Charming who does make an appearance, as does a podiatrist. So this has been such a privilege, and I just wanted to say thank you to Lena and the incredible team as well. And yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Melina. And I also, one of the things that I love noticing is, which obviously people listening to this right now can't notice because you didn't get to that part of the story. So do buy the book, people. Chocolate buttons appear later on in the story, and they were also in Sky's poem, Joyous Chocolate Buttons. And that happens quite a lot, that like themes or even tiny little details kind of repeat in the stories, and they appear in the original versions of the stories. So they don't start appearing because we're helping each other workshop and edit each other's work. They just happen. And just like the team in The Cleaner, it seems like we complement each other really well in our skill sets and stuff. So Julia has kindly collected all the questions so that I can go over them more coherently than I would be able to if I had to find them all in the actual chat on YouTube. But I would like to start with a quick question for Melina, actually, because it's very kind of Melina to be reading here today, because she has already read at the live launch that we had at Toppings and Company Bookshop in Edinburgh. So we were really grateful that we got to have a live event there. Normally this online launch is our first event and our main launch event, and this year it didn't quite materialize that way. But yeah, so I wanted to know from Melina, how is it different reading online? Like we talked about this briefly, sort of when we all came together on the Zoom before actually then going live more or less successfully. How was it different?
I think what surprised me is what's so similar. I mean, the love in this Zoom room is still the same as you get in a live event. I mean, it's at the live launch, you get to interact with other people and touch the books and hear everyone in person, and the story just comes alive in a different way. But when I was hearing everyone speak today, oh my goodness, I still got the goosebumps. So I'm a very lucky person today for having been able to experience both.
Thanks, Melina. Yeah, I was saying I'm more nervous before online events than I am before live events. Maybe because, you know, the Zoom needs to link up properly to the YouTube, who knows, but it's just different. And we were speculating that maybe it is because you can kind of see your own face talking back at you, even if you're trying not to look, you know, that kind of stuff. I'm going to switch back into gallery mode so that hopefully we can all see everybody. There we go. We're in gallery mode now for the questions. So, okay, questions and comments, like there were lots of cheers for you, Melina, is one of the comments. And then I'm just going to go to the top. There's a question from Darcy, a question for the poets with special formatting. How did you approach the live reading? Is your approach different compared to other poems? Does it affect the reading style? See, people are still thinking, but Katie looks like she might be ready to go.
Sure, I can talk a little bit about it. Just for mine in particular, the formatting for the second poem in my little two-part poem is just a block of text on the page, and it was something that I sat with for a while. I originally wrote it actually a little more like this. So this is how I read it. And I have it written out like this for reading so that I can remember where the pauses and kind of how the lines fit together, just to give me a little peace of mind, because it's also, you know, it's when you have a chunk of text, it's really easy to lose your place. And I didn't want that to happen. And that was something that I thought about when putting the piece together for the actual publication, because, you know, worried that, you know, will the reader actually just lose their place in it? But there's something so imposing about this page of continuous text that I just really, I'm an artist as well as a writer, and so the visual construction of a piece of text fascinates me. And then the other one, so you have this first poem with a lot of space and random looking lines, not actually random. And then this chunk, and I just really loved the juxtaposition of those. But we have a ton of other poets who played with form and style. So does anyone else want to say anything?
Maybe just, I feel like your poem, Katie, made me so emotional also because I knew the formatting, and it really adds so much, and it's sort of almost like the poem speaks in how it's on the page. It's like one is shouting and one is more disjointed, and it's just doing so much emotional work. And then I feel like for my poem, how I read it, I have a cascading line when the bike ride is turning, it's sort of ending, and I just feel like I did pace it in a particular way. I tried to read it softly, and like we're trying to land on where the biker lands, you know, on that same spot. And I try to do that justice. And I feel like formatting always affects how you read. I feel like it's very clever to actually reformat it like Katie did, because it always does something to you. But in this case, I was mimicking a bike ride, and I tried to read it also in that particular way, while also trying to show the shift between like the speaker and the person on the bike ride. You have the observer and you have the person who's on the bike ride, and I did format that very clearly on the page. And I guess like more than reading it differently, it's more like going with it also to an extent, to see where it leads you in the case of this poem. Yeah. Thank you for this amazing question.
Thanks, Hannah. And I also just wanted to the line, like drinking in the view you've made with your feet dancing in circles. I just wanted to say that again. I just really like it. And then maybe because this came up just after your reading, do you want to continue on and say as much and as little as you want about writing poetry, about topics that are personal?
Yeah. Oh, this is so interesting, because I think last year we got amazing questions as well. And somebody asked me, do you find it easy to write about something personal? And I very naively, but truthfully said, no, I find that really easy. At that time, I think I did feel about that, because I feel like there's such different stages to writing and how you develop when you write. And I feel like it is a very particular thing to write about such personal things, but there's not really anything that's not personal. Just like you said earlier about like, there isn't anything that isn't really political. So there's addressing stuff and there's not addressing stuff. And I guess the stuff that you leave out says just as much. And I guess in this case with endometriosis, I just, if you have any poems, you know, anyone really, send them in the chat maybe, because I don't know that many, and I think it's a good thing to try to connect over things like that. But endometriosis is something that is not researched well, and I feel like needs to be talked about. And I'm lucky that my case is not super severe. It's for anybody who doesn't know, it's a disease where there's tissue growing outside of your uterus, which isn't supposed to grow there, and can cause people immense pain. And it's a very unpredictable illness. But I mean, as I also wrote in the poem, I wrote about motherhood. I don't know if that's clear to everyone just hearing it once, but I feel like those two topics for me interconnect in a very personal way as well. And I love hearing different voices on this topic as well. And it's just nice to be part of that stream of poetry, to add to that stream, I guess, and to know that we're all being vulnerable together. Yeah.
Thanks, Hannah. Thanks for sharing that with us. And I very much agree about the importance of talking about things, writing about things, and bringing it out in the open. And then also art, I think, is, like I've kind of said before, a really good medium, because it can kind of be as forceful or gentle as you want, and you can engage with it at many different depths, and that's really rewarding. Like there's less of a risk of it just being overwhelming and being too much, because you can stay at the surface or you can delve deeper. And yeah, that's just just a really good thing. And because you brought it up again, the thing that I said about everything's political, I'm just gonna quickly slot this in now so that we don't sort of end on a downer, but like this is really important for me to say because quite often there's like a kind of almost like this pressure to keep politics out of it, whatever it is, like whether it's sports or art, like, oh, just keep the politics out of it. We're just sort of trying to have a nice evening celebrating this volume. And like, yeah, that's true. But also just looking around, like we're all female presenting people here. And we wouldn't be able to do this in some countries right now, like today. And I know when Wendelin has written about this, about like how much political stuff can I address in my poetry and, you know, still be okay. And just today I found out that actually there's an EU citizen at risk of being deported from the UK for engaging in peaceful climate protest. So it's happening, like the laws were being made, we were watching the laws getting made that sort of were infringing on our right to protest peacefully. They introduced a law where you can get arrested for causing annoyance publicly, which is obviously very vague. So it just means they can arrest you whenever, and then they sharpened that law to include, like, if you look like you're about to cause annoyance publicly, if you look like you're about to go to a protest, and then obviously this is going to affect like the usual marginalized groups more, as always, people with unstable right to remain in the country, for example, people with unstable work situations, people with financial hardships, people with caring responsibilities. This is not an exhaustive list, just to give you some examples. And now to see that it's actually happening a couple of years after Brexit, that EU citizens are getting deported. And this is a man who moved to the UK from the EU years ago, has a family here, has children here, and is now actually probably gonna get deported. And this is why it's so central to stay alert to these things and resist where we can, where we safely can. Yeah, just kind of wanted to slot that in there because that's one of the topics that I also addressed in the forewords. Is like, yeah, there's this pressure to kind of keep politics out of it, but can we still do that? Or can we ever do that? I personally don't think so. I think the time for keeping politics out of anything is long gone, and it's important to, you know, stay on top of things. Yeah, anyway, that was just a little sort of interlude because it'll just keep coming up, like also talking about illnesses and like how people with a uterus are treated in medicine, like all that sort of stuff. Like it's all political, and we either talk about it or we don't, and each is a choice and each has an effect. Okay, back to the questions, which hopefully will be a bit more joyful. Right, special formatting. Oh, this is just some praise for Monica. Platypus Bear says, your grandpa's such a character. I love it. And then Julia actually asks, did that really happen? There's a photo with it, so I'm assuming it did, but like there have been writers who tricked us into believing something is real because they put photos with it before. So, you know, who knows? And you made me feel like I was the narrator. Sorry, there's like something covering up the thing. Yeah. Oh, and you've already answered this, but like, do you maybe want to answer it?
Elaborate a bit more.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this really did happen one summer when I was 15. Summer vacations, I wanted to learn how to drive a scooter, and my grandfather decided that he'd be the one to teach me. I wrote this piece, I think a week after he passed away. So this was actually sort of a process of grieving for me. I was trying to figure out, I just wanted to write something about him, and I wanted to figure out what would be the best story, because I have so many wonderful memories, but this just sort of popped up in my head, this one incident. And I remember thinking how funny it was that I was just early in the morning sitting and pushing the scooter along, and he's just strolling next to me, like he's all happy and everything's fine. And I'm like, I'm dying here, man. Are you serious? So I don't know, I just remembered that incident very vividly when I wanted to write something about him. So I was like, I think I'll write this down. I mean, it was a very fun piece. When I'd written it down, I chatted with some friends, and it starts off super funny, and then in the end you sort of get to the point where you realize that he's no longer here with us. But yeah, it's a lovely memory to have. And when I found out that this picture was the first picture I'd ever taken, and it was with him, I thought it was super special. So that's why I asked if that could be put in, and you did. So thank you so much for that. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you, Monica. I'm glad that's in there. That was another thing that just emerged. Like my story that I have in there is about grandparents, and my story is fictional, but it's still very much my grandfather passed away a couple of years ago, and it's inspired by like the house and the childhood memories and things. And so I think the stories, I put them one after the other as well in the volume. And it ties in, like there's a new question from Shakti, which is, how do you decide how much of your culture to incorporate in a way that foreign audiences can enjoy as well?
Ooh, that's a good question, because I remember when I first wrote the story, the editor was a bit confused because I'd not explained certain things. For instance, when I'd mentioned scooter, they were like, what kind of scooter is this? Because you have scooters which you just push with your legs and things like that. So I realized, oh, I have to elaborate. I need to like explain. Some things I did not explain like within the story. I got explanations like after the story. For terms like tata, which means grandfather, and like lungi, which is a garment that Indian men wear. So I realized I have to explain this later on, or of course, people could always look it up. But I thought if it's all there, then it's just easier for them to understand. It's just easier for everyone to like go through the whole thing and know what's happening without having to like interrupt their thought process and go and find out and come back. Because it's a really short story, I wanted to keep them immersed. But yeah, choosing how much to reveal of the culture was, I had to go back and forth with my editor to like make sure that it works, because my editor was not an Indian, so it was easier to bounce ideas off of them, because they'll tell me what they understand, what they don't understand. So it was easier to incorporate, which I'm glad about. So yeah.
Thank you. Thanks, Monica. Does anybody else have any thoughts or insights on this topic? Okay. All right. I was thinking kind of like that is also a political aspect of writing, how much like which cultural aspects do we think we need to explain, and what do we think foreign audiences are, or foreign writers. Is that even a thing? Is there such a thing? What do we think needs explaining, and why do these things need explaining and other things don't? That was kind of what popped into my head when I saw this question. So again, what we say, what we explain, they all matter. They're all messages. Okay, so moving on to Nicole. She's got lots of sort of, that was great, that was awesome. And a question, what was the inspiration behind the spooky couple in your story?
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, so most of my work explores relationships in some form or another. If you came to the Hillfire readings or picked up the last anthology, that was also about a not so healthy relationship. I don't always write about unhealthy relationships. I do also write happy ones and family and friendship and stuff, but the kind of interpersonal, my cat wants to join in the conversation. Relationships are just really interesting to me. And I actually wrote this piece when I was going through a reading phase of only wanting to read like gothic, spooky seaside horror, which was very niche and very hard to find things that fit that. It's two of the books that really inspired me were Girls of Salt and Sea by Natalia Macias Lucia and titled almost exactly the same, House of Salt and Sorrows by Erin Craig. But there's a lot of books kind of in that genre and they're all very atmospheric. And so I wanted to write something kind of spooky seaside horror where I focused a lot on the language and the imagery. And then this relationship kind of came out from that. I wanted to see how I could explore these people through the images of how they interact with each other. And it became very bloody and gory, which is not what I normally write, but I had a really good time doing it. So this one was really not so much about the characters particularly, but the way I wanted to tell their story, if that makes sense.
Oh, thanks, Nicole. That's really interesting to hear because I just jumped to conclusions and I was like, oh, this is obviously like exaggerating a real life dynamic in this way and stuff, which I can see Nicole shaking her head. I don't know what exactly is showing on the YouTube, but so obviously that was totally wrong.
Yes, they're completely fictional, that relation. I think the blood around the necklace is like a lot of celebrities, and I think that's a thing people have done. I will say the name Kane came from a guy I was friends with when I was little. He was perfectly lovely and had nothing to do with it, but I did, if this gets back to him somehow, I stole his name.
Oh, and Polly says, I love that, so unique. And she was also the one who asked the question in the first place. So thanks for that question. Okay, so for Julia, it's like lots of praise. Someone says, what a performance. And Victor says, can't wait to read the rest. Well done. So yeah, really enjoyed your reading. I'll say it again. Katie, that was powerful. Love your voice when you read, Katie. And wow, poetry. Yeah, indeed. And then moving on to Wendy, Darcy says, the heartfelt support you have for one another is wonderful. What a great team. Oh, yeah, that's so nice to read. Yeah, I've tried to create this through the structures that we have and through the sort of support that we have and how we interact. We're all very far away from each other, so it isn't always easy. And it definitely would have no chance of working if it wasn't for the amazing people who are part of it. But that's really lovely to read. Julia says, I loved Under Arthur's Seat. We always talk about climbing mountains. Did you imagine being under Arthur's seat, like having all the weight of it on your shoulders?
Well, I'm thinking when I was writing the tankas, I was really aware of the environment around me. It's so different. And for Arthur's Seat, it's got a lot of like special meaning to me. And first of all, of course, our anthology during our master's degree, it's got like the exact title, and also like I was thinking about it's a piece I'd create for like Hillfire Press, and I know that there's a connection between like the gorse, the yellow flower. It has to do with like Arthur's Seat. So I'm thinking, just how do I incorporate these like awareness of my surroundings and my environment into it? And yeah, and also like for me personally, Arthur's Seat has this shape which reminds me of Lion Rock, which is a very iconic mountain in Hong Kong, so back in home. So whenever I was like homesick, I would just stroll along like around Arthur's Seat, and just to remind myself of like this very iconic mountain back home. So yeah, and that's pretty much why Under Arthur's Seat. And I'd just like to add that I really agree that every like kind of art, they are political, and please don't shy away from the topics. And if you have any like cultural elements you're very like aware of, just don't shy away from it. Feel free to like, I think it's very important that we address it in our writing. Just don't feel like this barrier of like the pressure of the audience like response, like instead of like letting what you think the audience might respond, just instead of like making that stop you from writing, just feel free to write whatever you think is important. I think that's like the most important thing.
Write what you think is important. I just muted Wendy rather than unmuting myself. I'm just gonna, yeah, you can unmute yourself again. Okay, good. Yeah, thanks. Write what you think is important. And so the thing about Arthur's Seat, From Arthur's Seat was the name of the anthology, or is the name of the anthology, because it's still going, that the master's program at the University of Edinburgh publishes. And Arthur's Seat, the hill itself, is covered in gauze, which is just bright yellow. And in the summer, it shines so bright you can see it from really far away. And that's how I came up with the name Hillfire. And you can also see, hopefully, that our logo is a gauze flower, and this beautiful logo was also designed by Anna O'Connor, like our cover. Okay, so yeah, the cake for Hannah. There's cake in the kitchen, and also there's mint to be harvested for your watermelon salad on someone's balcony, on Kata's balcony, I think. And Julia says, I'm so proud that there is a poem about endometriosis in the anthology. I'm always wanting to write about period. So thank you for helping us do that worldwide. And yeah, this is the mint comment. Yes, come harvest some mint. And then for Sky, yeah, Alyssa cries at Sunshine on Leaf too. So you're in good company. Alyssa abroad, she makes really funny videos about life abroad and traveling, so do go and check out her blog. Julia says, this is a cliche, but I never tire of Scottish accent, and it makes me remember my Edinburgh time. Yeah, it's really nice to hear you read. And Kata says, you put into words how I feel about poetry in the first piece. Thank you, Sky. I adore your poetry. So yeah. And is your grandma actually tuning in?
I'll play it for her at some point.
Yeah. Ah, nice. Yeah. And yeah, awesome. It's so
the book, of course.
Yeah. Well, once you play it for her, hello, Sky's grandma. As you know, your granddaughter writes some amazing poetry. All right. Melina, there are cheers for you. And interesting question. Did I get that, Katie, the question for Julia? And then, oh yeah, yours was a very touching story about dealing with loss. One remark struck me, make it stop. Yeah, that's really, yeah, a poignant point for me as well. Like when, you shouldn't have to go through it. And then you're like, well, make it stop then. Do you want to say anything about that?
Yeah, I've read the second part of the question that says, I am curious to know what you were trying to convey here, just an outburst on the young narrator's part, or more of a social responsibility on our end to keep our young ones safer. It's true that I hadn't thought about the social aspect of it, because For me, all the losses I have lived, they weren't really about like a social problem. They were a bit of a being in the wrong moment at the wrong time, and also a bit of how do you say this, mental health. Yeah. So but this idea, this make it stop, it's something that comes back to me a lot, because people would say, oh, this shouldn't happen, and then you want to say, well, then why is it happening, right? And that anger, that the fact that nobody can help you, even if you don't like what is happening, it's happening. And so maybe it means that a comment like it shouldn't happen isn't useful, but I like those comments as well. So it's just the conflict between the fact that you don't want it to happen and it's happening. So yeah, it's more of an outburst. Yeah. Thank you for the question.
Oh, thank you, Julia, for a beautiful answer. So that concludes the questions that we have. So this is your last chance if there are any other questions, and also if any of the authors want to say something else, just sort of wave at me, let me know, or just unmute yourselves and just say it.
I maybe had a question for Melina, because I just feel like your story balances trauma and humor in such a impressive way, and I was wondering how you approached that. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I think when it comes to all these stories, I just imagine these people going through life on an everyday basis, and that essentially is what happens in every day, isn't it? Where you have to balance what you're going through and try to find some meaning to it. So that was very important to me when I was going through the story, that it didn't sound like she was abused, or it had to show that Cinderella was making her own decisions, and well, my version of Cinderella, and she wasn't like waiting for someone to rescue her. And happy ever after is how you define it, whatever makes sense to you at that time. So yeah, so thank you.
Thank you. I love that.
Thank you. Okay, that part is more personal one, so it was nice to have a question. Yeah, I agree. All right, well, I want to say a huge thank you to everybody who came to watch and listen to this tonight. And also, if you're watching this at any point in the future, thank you for watching the video. The book, Volume 1 and Volume 2, and any future volumes are or will be available on our website, hillfirepress.com. That's Hillfire, like the hill, like Arthur's Seat, not like hell. Yeah, like the hill. And then I would like to say thank you to everybody who is here reading tonight, because it's really no fun trying to run a reading when there are no readers. Thank you so much for sharing your work. It's a vulnerable position to be sharing your work to an audience, and especially with something like this that'll be available online afterwards. I have a lot of respect for everybody here who has shared their work generously, publicly. And special thanks to Monica, because how late is it where you are, Monica?
It's 2:15 a.m.
Yep. So special thanks for, holding out, sticking around for so long. I wish we could actually adjust time zones rather than just sort of trying to plan for time zones and then it never suits everybody. So extra appreciation for being here, contributing your beautiful story. That's awesome. And what else? The team, obviously, who made the book happen, just fantastic. The team page is a whole page, so I'm not going to read it all out, but like I guess it's fairly obvious that something like this, a project like this, one person can't make it happen. So there's a whole team behind it, and we work together, and it works, and it's amazing. So thanks to everybody on the team. I know some of them are watching, which is also extra nice. Just so nice to come along to something like this and support the other writers. And
interrupt Lena, because we have to take a moment to appreciate our incredible leader, who, like, the vision that she has for this space. When you talk about creating a space for writers to come, when I talk about Hillfire to other people, I'm just like, the whole point of this publication, this group of people, is truly to have a space where we strive for excellence in our writing, but we can do that in a freedom without worrying about rejection. Because if you're familiar with writing at all, you're constantly being rejected and told to edit it and make it better and tweak this and change that. And having a space where you know that no matter what you write, people are going to read it. That is so exciting. And you know that people are going to read something really good because you want to bring something good to the table, but then you also have this incredible team around you who also wants to help you bring the best thing that you can to the reader. And Lena has done so much to galvanize us, and to you talk about emails, all throughout the year being like, hey, don't forget this. And now we have, workshop deadlines and jump on Discord, and we're all trying to figure all this out. And we really, really do appreciate it a lot. This is an incredible space. And I know we've been plugging the book a lot, but every time y'all buy a copy, you're helping support us as writers. You're helping to create a really healthy and awesome writing space. And you're giving us a foundation for the next volume and the next one and the next one and the next one. So thank you, everyone. And thank you, Lena. We love you. You're receiving love right now from all over the world. So yay.
oh, thank you. Well, thank you. All the people here usually write emails back to me that have appreciation in them, even if I'm asking for things, even if I'm asking for all the finances to be sorted out in an Excel sheet. Sorry, I just keep, because that's just the thing that I really don't want to do. So, but also, when I needed this help with this launch being organized, or just even when it's not just helping with something, even if it's just like reminding me when it's getting a bit hectic, the people on here have been reminding me that the space is appreciated, and it's really invaluable, and it's what keeps me going. All right, before we all start crying, let's wrap this up. There are more lovely comments. Oh, Emerson is here. Hi, Emerson. Wonderful job, everyone. So grateful to be a part of such a talented group of writers. We're also so happy that you're part of it as well, Emerson. Hannah's parents are here and have heard Hannah read her fantastic work. So that's really, really nice. And also they were on the first launch as well that we had to postpone. So I'm very, very glad that you made it over to this launch. And then, yeah, that's it for the comments. Lots of hearts, lots of smiley faces. I hope there are smiley faces behind the computers at home as well. And with that, I wish you all a very good night. And let's just wave into the camera so that that's the last frame. And then I'm just gonna